Hello everybody! In this video, we're getting ready to lay down our N scale or narrow gauge track loop. So the first thing we want to do before we lay down the track is make sure that it can make it all the way around in one continuous loop. So in order to do that, we have to make a new bridge that we are going to put right across our water feature right about here. With the exact placement, we're not exactly sure yet, but the first step in making sure that we can complete our loop is to make sure that it can cross this, again, this water feature here. So in this video, we're going to make a bridge that will cross that water feature that we can run our N scale track across. Okay, just to give you a little background, if you remember when we did our layout over before earlier this year, we created this bridge right here and we recorded that in a video called Cross That Bridge. So what we did basically, kind of in a nutshell here, is that we took two pieces of angle iron and we cut it to length, and the length happens to be 21 inches to make that span. And then what we did was we created this kind of wooden deck here out of individual planks, and you can see we just kind of glued it up the spline here or up the back just to hold all those planks together. And then we just placed that decking right across the angle iron there, and that made quite a nice bridge. I thought it was nice, but and it worked really well. This was for an HO scale track here, and we had it double wide. So you can see this in multiple previous videos of us running trains on the layout, where you can see this bridge had two sets of tracks running over it for HO. Now this angle iron here is, I believe it is 1.25 inches high. So the side rails here are 1.25 inches, and I thought that looked pretty good for HO scale. So I mean, it wasn't exactly this angle iron. You just kind of have to get it in its in its dimensions here. So you just get for us, we just got the one that felt like it looked the best with the HO scale, and that happened to be this size. Now this new bridge is going to be running with N scale track over it, or what we'll use it as a narrow gauge on our HO layout here, our new flex track layout. So what I did here was I got 3/4 inch angle iron here because we want to reduce the dimensions of the bridge so it looks more to scale with N scale trains or narrow gauge trains running over it. So again, this is 3/4 inch angle iron here as opposed to 1.25 inch angle iron that we used on our HO bridge. And the other feature is that it's only going to have one piece of track running over it. So it won't be, relatively speaking, it won't be as wide as this. It'll just be wide enough to have one piece of track running over, one piece of N scale track running over it. So we're also going to do another technique, something a little bit different, is rather than make the decking with individual planks like we did with this bridge here, we're going to use one solid piece of wood, and then we're going to use a little visual trickery for the planks and use our wood burning kit and etch out the individual planks running across the wood. And that'll give us a little visual illusion of planks, even though it'll be a solid piece of wood. So again, just trying to try something different and see how good we can make it look. And then we're going to paint this angle iron once we get this all fabricated with a oxide red color, like a primer red. So that'll look nice and kind of industrial and give it a kind of an aged look. I hope it will be the effect when it's all said and done. But yeah, so the first step here is going to be to cut this angle iron and get two lengths of 21 inches each. So that'll be the first thing we do. Okay, before we make any cuts to our angle iron, we just want to verify that our span that we're trying to cross is actually 21 inches. Now, before we put in this water feature or this pond feature, this was just an open gap here, and it was 21 inches, and that hasn't changed. But it's always best to measure twice and cut once, because you just never know. Okay, so we have our angle iron all clamped in the vise. We have our first increment of 21 inches marked out, and all we have to do is cut off our first piece. If you have a reciprocating saw with a metal cutting blade on it, that can make the cutting of the angle iron go a little bit quicker. Alright, so there's our two pieces of angle iron cut to length. You can see they're about the same length, or they should be exactly the same length as the old bridge, the bridge on the right, and we have it set there about as wide as we want it to be. Again, this is going to handle a single lane of traffic for N-scale track. So we're aiming for about 1.5 inches, maybe 1.3 inches, maybe we'll bump it out to 1.75 inches just for safety wide. So the next step here for our metal work though will be to grind the shoulders on the end of the angle iron. So let me show you what I mean by that. On our pieces of angle iron, we kind of ground this shoulder, kind of rounded over that shoulder to make it look like, again, one of those steel girder type bridges. So we'll take our grinder, and what we'll do here is with this angle iron here, we'll just go ahead and round off. We'll actually take the burrs off of the end of the cuts too with the grinder, and then we'll round over the shoulders with that too. So we'll give you a look at that, and then we'll move on from there. Okay, you can see here we've got our nice rounded over shoulder here. Let's see if we can get that camera to focus. I think that's good right there. So you can see we rounded over it, and the other thing we did too is we kind of took care of those burrs. Focus. We kind of took care of those burrs too. So yeah, so we're just going to continue to do that on the other 3 sides, and then we'll be ready for paint as the next step. All right, so as you can see, we've got our grinding done. We've got our 4 shoulders rounded over, kind of in the same style as the old bridge there. So the next step, and the final step for the metalworking here, will be to hit it with some of this red oxide primer that we chose as the color of the bridge. That'll be a nice, you know, kind of give it a weathered, kind of rusty type of look to it. So we think that's, for our personal style, we think that's a pretty good choice. So let's go out and paint it, and then we'll move on to the woodworking. Okay, so next up we're going to shape the piece of wood for the deck, and what we're going to do is we're going to do the decking about, we're going to do it 1.75 inches wide. We have to go 21 inches in length just to make sure that we with the same length as the angle irons that we just worked on. And then we're going to cut down the length. Like this is a 1x piece of lumber here, and 1x is usually 3/4 inch wide actually in actuality. So then we're going to stand that piece of wood up on its edge, and we're really going to go for a really thin deck because we don't want it to be kind of too high for the angle iron sides, you know, for the bridge. We want nice sidewalls on the bridge, so we don't want to make the decking too high for that. So we're going to get that as thin as we can. So basically we're going to cut it to width, which is 1 3/4. Then we're going to cut it to length, and then we're going to cut it to the thickness that we want. Now we don't have a planer here, we just have a table saw to work with. So we're going to cut it to the correct thickness right here on the table saw. Alright guys, so here is the piece of wood that we came up with. You can see, let me move this stuff back here so you might be able to get a better profile there. It's very thin. This is the thickness of the deck. It's 1 3/4 inches wide, which actually may be a little bit too wide for the N-scale track, but I think we're going to stick with that. And it's 21 inches long. So this is what it will look like with the track on it. You know, that's the kind of the reference there as far as how that's going to look widthwise. So Like I said, it could be a little wide for realism, but I think we're okay with it. So the next thing that we're going to do now is we have two treatments that we want to give this little piece of deck here. So what we're going to do here is we're going to simulate planking down the side here, down the perpendicular to the length here. And so what we're going to do is we're going to use our wood burning iron here. You see that right over there? That's our little Weller, not very expensive, like 17 bucks or something like that on Amazon. And what we're going to do here is we'll use a piece of wood here just as a work surface here. And then what he's going to do is take this square here and just move his way down and just etch, lines, wood burn lines right down the whole length of that piece of wood there. Shouldn't take too long. A little bit tedious because it's a very repetitive motion, and it's okay if it's not measured out, because I think in real life you would want to see imperfections and whatnot in the workmanship anyway. And then if we get really ambitious, we might even pop some like spike or nail holes on the sides there to make it look like the planks are nailed down. So let's get those lines done first, and then we'll just go from there. Alright guys, so there it is. There is the decking with the wood burned planks in there. Doesn't look too bad. And then you can see we put the little nail or spike holes there on the ends. Now hypothetically that would probably be spiked in the center, or maybe two more rows there, but the track will be covering that, so we decided not to just do them on the outside. But yeah, hopefully that will work. That'll look good once we get it in the angle iron and look more like a bridge. But before we do that, we are going to stain this to give it a little bit of age to it, a little bit of patina. So yeah, we're going to go ahead and throw a couple coats of stain on that just to darken it up a bit and see what it looks like then. Okay, so the final bit of the woodworking piece here, now that the wood burning is done, is we're just going to throw some coats of stain on it. We'll just throw coats of stain on it until we're happy with the shade. So we don't really have to be too neat with this. Again, remember, this is a bridge that's been aging for years, and hypothetically, so yeah. So we're just going to kind of mush it around here. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to spill a little bit on top, and then I'll take my paper towel. Obviously we put down plastic, by the way. And I'm just going to take my paper towel here and just rub the stain in. I'll let the excess kind of roll off here. And we want to make sure, in the end, we want to make sure that we have even coverage. And I'm not too concerned with any of the stain that's going to go along the back, because that won't be seen anyway. But yeah, look at that, just after just a couple minutes, that actually looks pretty good. So we'll let that coat soak in there for a little while, dry a little bit, and then we'll throw another coat on there and see if we're happy with the shade. I'm kind of happy with it right now, but we'll throw one more coat on there and see what it looks like. In the meantime, we'll let this dry for a little while, and then we'll get back to it. And also, our angle irons are out in the garage drying. We've been painting those while we've been doing these other things here. And so probably within a couple hours we'll be able to put this thing together, and you'll be able to see what it looks like. Okay, so to do this operation here, we've got our glue open. I'm just going to spread a little out on this spare piece of, or this scrap piece of wood here. This actually isn't a scrap piece of wood. This is actually the thing that we supported our old bridge on the old railroad. This is our old bridge rested on this to get to the right height, but now it's a scrap piece of wood. So anyway, this stuff is, like I said, is really messy. You got to be careful with it because it may get places you don't want it to get to. So what I'm going to do is I squirt it out a little bit. I'm going to take a little bit just on a piece of wood here. And then what I'm going to do is just scrape it along the bottom of that angle iron here and just spread it out. We don't need a lot. Construction adhesive is super powerful stuff, and you really don't need a lot of it. So I'm just going to spread it out periodically here and then just kind of run it. I don't want to get it too close to the corner there because I don't want squeeze out, what we call glue squeeze out, to get above the deck, you know, in that corner there. We don't want any white showing. So just kind of do this type of thing here. So again, make sure that you don't make a mistake and put it on the wrong surface here. This is the side piece right here, and this is the bottom, so we want to make sure that it's on the bottom. If we put it on the side piece by accident, it's not a big deal at this point. What we would do is just scrape it off as best we could and just repaint the piece. Or actually, we'd let the adhesive dry and then we'd repaint and start again. And hopefully do it right. You would think that the way I'm talking about it, I don't like to use it, but I do. It's very powerful. You'll never get this bridge apart once it sets. Oh, and the other reason we use, I think I explained this when we were doing our other bridges, but the other reason we use construction adhesive in situations like this isn't because we need, you know, such a powerful glue. You know, it's only holding, you know, an N-scale train. It's going to hold itself together and only support an N-scale train. So the strength isn't the issue. What I like to do is use construction adhesive when we're putting two types of materials together. So we're doing wood and we're doing metal. And so I don't know if there's a glue that will do a great job on both of those surfaces at the same time. You know, we have this wood glue, and there's glue like Elmer's glue for project-y type of stuff. But when it comes to fastening metal and wood together, I kind of trust the construction adhesive will grab both surfaces and do that and hold together really nice. All right. So we've got our glue here. So as you can see, I've oriented our pieces. One thing we're definitely going to do here is set our pieces on saran wrap, or cling wrap as some folks call it. But around our area when I was growing up, it was called saran wrap. But it's just a plastic, you know, it's a plastic cling wrap. And the reason I do that is because, again, this construction adhesive will stick to everything. And so we don't want this to accidentally glue our bridge to our table, because we'll never get it apart. Anyway, so again, both surfaces has a bead of glue on both sides. So now we're just going to take our deck, stick it on one side. We'll slide this one under, and then the same thing here. Press it together. Now, the other thing we want to make sure is that everything's even. So I'm going to take this square, and I'm going to go to the end of our bridge and just make sure that everything is squared up. Okay? So that looks pretty good. That's nice and square at that end. And again, we want to make sure that everything is pressed together and everything is seated firmly. You can never check your square enough, and especially before this stuff sets. So that looks pretty good there. We can check it down here as well. And that's looking pretty good. If it's off by a little bit, it's fine. It'll still look good. If your lengths are different, and these lengths could be a little bit different because, you know, we cut this with a hacksaw using a line. This wasn't done, or we did it with a reciprocating saw. So, you know, we could be a 32nd of an inch off, you know, one piece longer than the other. That I'm not too worried about. But yeah, so just press that down, and you can see, you can't, I think from the angle of the camera you can't see the inside corner here, but you can see on this corner here that you can see there's no glue coming through, which is what we want. So that's good here. We'll weight that down with something, you know, we don't have, so something that'll fit in between there to keep that deck firmly pressed to the bottom of that and get some good adhesion there. But yeah, I think that's the gluing right now. We'll throw some weights on that to make sure that everything gets held together. And then after that, we'll fit it on the pond, and we'll put those fake kind of granite blocks that we put on the two 3D printed bridges to keep them up, and we'll make sure that those heights are right, so that the bridge, so that the surface of our deck is level with the surface of our layout surface, and then she'll be done. Now the next thing we need to do is to create some supports to go under the either end of the bridge to support it and keep it level with the rest of the layout, similar to what we did here with the 3D printed bridges. So we have these little blocks of wood that we cut to size and to height. The height is different on either end because of the thinness of the epoxy down here compared to the thickness. So this whole layout isn't completely level. You can tell that by the way the epoxy settled when it was a liquid. But anyway, so we have to create a couple of these blocks here, and all these are just cut pieces of wood that are just cut to shape, you know, cut to size, and then we painted them with some spray paint that emulates a granite finish, a granite block finish. So we're going to go over to the bandsaw, we're going to cut some supports for that, and then we'll set the bridge in place. So we're just taking some scrap pieces of wood here. You can see I've got it marked out, the width, and there should be a little mark there for the height somewhere. I think it's right on the end there, and that'll give us the right height on one end. And then we've got this other little spare piece of wood here that will cut to length and then also cut to the correct height. So let's get that done. Once the supports are cut and sized properly, it's time to give them a couple of coats of that granite finish spray paint. We bought the stone textured spray paint from Krylon, and the texture is a granite, or texture and color is a granite texture color. And that's what we use for our other bridge supports. That came out pretty good, I think. It's kind of a convincing, quick way to do kind of a faux granite support. So we'll wait for those to dry, and then we'll use some construction adhesive and we'll fasten them to the bottom of the bridge, and we'll put the bridge in place. Okay, so one of the last things we need to do here is now to take our little granite painted supports, put some of this Gorilla construction adhesive that we've been using, and fasten them to the bottom of the bridge, and then put the bridge in place. All right, and there it is, our finished narrow gauge bridge. And it's spanning across the water feature, or the fake water feature, and about the position it's going to be in. We might slide that back and, you know, up or down depending on where the end scale or narrow gauge track eventually ends up. But yeah, it's all fastened together. It's just not fastened to the layout itself, so we can shift it around as needed. But that's going to give you a good idea of what it's going to look like. So we're pretty happy with it. You know, kind of a homemade thing here. Really, the only real cost to it was just the angle iron, which was, I think, about $17. Everything else was just used with scrap wood that we have lying around. And then, of course, some of the specialty tools that you might need, like a table saw, a bandsaw. I know not everybody has those type of tools, but, you know, if you have them, it certainly makes the job a lot easier. But yeah, these homemade things are pretty good. Gives you a little sense of accomplishment. And yeah, so that's it for this video. I think our next step is to now lay the track, now that we can lay the complete loop around, now that we have the bridge done. So, all right, so we'll tackle that next, and we'll see you in the next video.